Hello, designers. Welcome back to the fourth and final part of our short video series on using Adobe Dimension to create package design prototypes for print. Right, I'm going to put that back where it lives. Let's go back into Dimension. So what we have done along the way, we started out by changing our resolution to 300, changed our canvas to inches, which switched because I've had this file open and closed a couple times here. We set our canvas size to 10 by 8. I find that's reasonable for an image size for letter size page layouts. And then our scene units are in inches so that our physical measurements of our packages make sense to us. We started out, and then before we went on to building our models, we put a simple background in here just using two planes. I angled it slightly off perpendicular. The idea is that you're going to be able to fully fill the canvas with the background so that we aren't seeing any blanks or when dimension renders out, it will lose the grid, but you'll just have white, which sometimes is a good thing, but not always. Okay, so here we are here. Also, we got our model in. We looked at placing our graphics both as decal and pattern out of Illustrator. We looked at swapping the artboards. I actually went back and put a background on this little egg and bacon pattern that's in here. Along the way, we set camera bookmarks so that we have views set for our final output. I have a home base overview of the package. I have a bottom up kind of worm's eye view, and then I have a top down view because I was very particular about placing this graphic on the very top of the canister. We lit this properly while we were looking at lighting. I'm going to go back to the worm. We used the render preview so that we had a better idea actually how dark the materials were and where the light was casting uh, on our prototype itself. I'm going to go ahead and turn that back off. All right, one last time, doesn't matter which view I'm on here, by the way. One last time, I'm going to save this, and all the heavy lifting is done. We are officially going to switch over from work mode in design here to render. Underneath the render tab, you will notice going top down on the render settings, we have the option to render locally, making our computer, our machine, uh, actually do the processing and rendering of creating these final images, or you can have it done out in the Adobe cloud. The cloud renders go super fast, but be aware if we look down here just above the actual render button, you have a certain amount of credits allotted each month with your subscription. They do not carry over, but they do replenish every month. Keep an eye on those credits. What I have selected right now, just the current view and just as a Photoshop file, is going to require 3 credits, and that's based on time on their server. Pay attention to that. The cloud renders, again, they do go super fast, but I would save those for when you have really, really heavy duty, a lot of packages, when you're rendering out the full suite so that you can see the entire suite together. That's when I would suggest it's worth using some of those credits and rendering on the cloud. Locally, it's going to be about 10 minutes per view per file. So I'm going to uncheck current view. I want the 3 bookmarks I set. So that's going to be home base, worm, and top down. By default, it's going to pick up the file name for the export name. It will also add the view to the file name with the final renders. Quality high always, and I like to have it kick out both a PSD as well as a flat PNG. I like to have backups of things, so that's the reason why. Again, this is going to take roughly 10 minutes per view per file. So I have three views, two files. That's 6 files total, 10 minutes each. This is going to take about an hour. So I would go ahead and hit render here, and my machine would take off. You can have that render in the background and just let it work. Um, just let it work as long as you're not, you won't be able to work in Dimension. It's too much tax on your machine. You won't be able to go out and watch a movie and stream video on your machine. But if you wanted to hop over to, say, Illustrator or Photoshop and do some post or InDesign, you would be able to continue working on your computer. You probably would only notice the smallest amount of lag while your machine is working on those renders. I like to render, I have one folder top level for all my renders, and then I have individual folders based on projects. So we're actually, for post in Photoshop, we're going to look at a different file. I don't have time to render these out right now, but I absolutely will later because I like that little package and I like to have examples of renders to show. But what you will see for this one, I had it kick out a couple different views and PNGs and PSDs. So this was just a quick can demo with some standard graphics that I had built. I have PNGs and layered PSD files. And then this one right here, this stand-up box, is actually the one that we're going to look at in post. So I have this PSD file open in Photoshop already. This is what the render looks like. Full screen that. Full screen, because I'm on a really large cinema display, is going to look a little fuzzy. Don't worry about that. Placed in a document and printed, I guarantee this thing would print like a champ. Not pixelated, not fuzzy. But here, that's kind of what it looks like. What you'll see in your layered PSD file, there's a flat background color all the way behind this. You can't actually see it, so you can turn that off. The background image, right, it's linked to a texture that it's reading, is why that's a smart object, but it's fine. You can leave it that way. I like to look at the reduced noise version. The chance of, I can see it in the shadow right here in the front when I'm flipping on here. There's a little more shadow in the regular render versus the reduced noise, but the reduced noise is a little crisper, at least for the graphics that I've placed in here. Additionally, there are masks in here to help you select things. Now, I was tricky when I put these graphics in, and I have a background behind this one, so I can't actually kind of select these things. But what I wanted to show you was, let's say that I wanted to make sure that this luchador typeset logo was really super crisp in here. So what I can do in post, and I have, this is the layer I have right now. What I can do in post is I'm going to use the Polygonal Lasso, and I'm going to go ahead and make a selection, including the background, of this logo. Actually, I want to place first because I need to use this for reference from the actual logo. So what I'm going to do is place just above that, embedded, the actual original logo. So I need to go hunt for that, unfortunately. Character plus name, it's in here, right? It's right here in this Illustrator file. So I'm going to hit options. No, I'm going to hit place. That's going to allow me to select the artboard that I want. I'm going to let it place in here. I'm going to get it sized as close to this guy as possible. So we're here. I'm going to go ahead and commit to that sizing. And now all I have to do is adjust the perspective of this. So I'm in the right spot. Let's get back to my move tool here. So I'm in the right spot. And you can see how the perspective really distorts this. So I'm on the right layer. I'm going to go to Edit and Transform. And what I actually need is Distort because that to me is the easiest way to fake perspective because it lets you drag the corners. Right now, this logo type is in here as a smart object. So I need to rasterize this layer. And now I will be able to transform distort. You can see that gives me a bounding box with corners. And what I'm going to do is drag my corners until my type hits the logo underneath using that as my reference. Now it's in here correctly in perspective. I'm going to go ahead and commit to that. And then next move, I'm going to turn this off for a second. Go back to the original layer. Now I'm going to use the Polygonal Lasso to make a selection. Doesn't have to be close. Once I have my active selection, I'm going to go to Edit Fill. And in the Fill dialog, I'm going to do Content Aware. I'm going to hit OK. What that's going to do is take out the original logo, but leave me with proper lighting and the background here. I'm going to turn back on my character name, and then here's the old school trick for how we used to have to do this. I'm going to put one layer in here on multiply, then I'm going to copy it. I'm going to put the layer on top for a blending mode on soft light. Maybe the multiply layer, it's reading a little dark, so I'm going to lighten that a bit. The reason to use multiply is it'll bring through any texture, and then you want to have the soft light layer to up the lighting game a little bit. Okay, this is close. I would spend a little more time actually adjusting that in so that it looked totally correct with the perspective. I'm slightly off on this angle, but that's a quick post adjustment. And then the other thing also, if you needed to, let's say that I felt this was a little dark around the edges. I could add a brightness contrast adjustment to it, lighten this up ever so slightly, and while I was in here, I'd probably bump the contrast to about 10, okay? So now I could resave this as my Photoshop file, and then flatten all my layers and kick out a regular image that I could place into any layout software that I need to be working with. All right, that is render out and post in Photoshop, and now you're all champs for making print quality package prototypes. Enjoy.